Hi everyone and welcome. We're in my wormery today, and if you're a follower of my channel, then you'll know that it wasn't very long ago, yesterday as a matter of fact, that I was down here taking care of a fair number of things, not least of which included the harvesting of the compost out of a 180-day-old bin, as well as the reinforcement of the food supply in the horizontal migration that's going on in my next two oldest bins that are tracking at I guess a couple weeks now, maybe 15 days now on their horizontal migrations, attempting to make their way to the finish line at some point soon. And another thing that occurred as part of yesterday's work, which was not only the harvesting of the compost from the 180-day-old bin, but it was also the relocation of the worms from that bin, and those worms ended up in this bin, which is my newest bin, which is 11 days old today. Certainly not an old bin. And I even featured its first feeding in a video recently. I can link to that video up here in the corner if you wish to see it. But it just showed the first feeding for this bin after being launched. And that consisted of all kinds of stuff. Lettuce, sliced potato skins in small little shreds. And it seemed like a pretty generous feeding. So I was a little bit surprised when I returned to this bin yesterday to add the new worms to find hardly any of the food remaining that had been placed in there only maybe 3 or 4 days prior. And, you know, since I just added a whole bunch more worms to this, probably doubling the population as a result of adding yesterday's worms, I grew concerned that there just might not be enough food in this bin. So I decided, and I made mention of it yesterday even, that it's probably a good idea to feed this bin ASAP. So I'm back down here today to take care of some unfinished business from yesterday. So to reach that objective, I've got some stuff out of my freezer. Mostly vegetables. I believe we've got some pear inside this paper towel. They enjoy paper towel too, so they'll get that too. And another thing that I've fed with in the past, which hopefully goes over well, is rice. This is leftover rice from a recent takeout order from the nearest Chinese food restaurant. So before feeding them, I just figured we'd take a quick glance at how the worms are doing in here. And since the last feeding was more or less gone when we peeked in here yesterday, I don't expect to see all the worms in one particular place congregating together, because there is no one place in the bin that should really draw their attention, so there's no big heap of food down the middle. But there sure will be once we get this feeding taken care of. So let's start poking down here. We'll create a little bit of a divot into which we can place the new feeding. And in the meantime, we'll just see what we can do in terms of spotting a worm or two. I'm just taking these larger scraps of cardboard I'm finding as we go down and setting them aside, because they'll probably come in pretty handy as a nice bedding material to lay down before I add the food. I'm just kind of gradually peeling back here, just so that as I do so I can try to salvage any larger shreds of cardboard I might run into in the process. But like I mentioned, there's really no one spot in this bin right now where I would really expect to find a jumble of worms like I normally do in my bins, mainly because the food that was added last time most recently appears to have, for the most part, been depleted. Except, you know, when I peel right down to the bottom, just peel up the material on the very bottom of the bin, that is actually where I'm starting to find the largest number of worms that we've seen. And I believe that's probably just because of the moisture that was in the food that was most recently added did drip down into the bedding that was beneath it, and I guess that makes that into a fairly desirable place for the worms to hang out. I guess in the absence of solid food, bedding material soaked with the juices of the solid food is the next best thing. So it's not surprising to scour the bottom and find a fair number of worms cruising throughout the bedding material, which is a little bit damp. My feedings tend to kick off a little bit of moisture because the food I add is typically frozen, and the thawing process appears to help a lot of the moisture escape the food items. Not only that, but it also the freezing also helps sort of accelerate the breakdown of the material. Here we go. What's this piece of paper towel, maybe? I don't know. All good stuff that I think we can certainly utilize as bedding. So a lot of this damp bedding that was already down here is good. And we're just going to supplement that a little bit with the stuff that we pushed off onto the side here. So we'll just lay these cardboard scraps that we encountered on our way down and use them to line the new feeding that we're going to add momentarily. Okay. I believe this looks pretty decent. So let's proceed with placing some of their food in here for them. These hunks of rice, I'm just curious to see how they go. In the past, I've seen rice either go very rapidly or rather slowly, but we'll see how this progresses. So right on top of that, we'll start laying in the food. This is parsley, this is cucumber peels, this is celery, a whole variety of different types of greens and oranges, carrot. This past weekend there was a little bit of a kind of a cookout at my brother-in-law's birthday party. He decided he was going to prepare the food himself over an open fire outside in the yard. And to help with that, my mom took the time to prepare all of the greens and the soup vegetables that would go into the stew. So they kind of teamed up to create a really delicious meal for us on Saturday. So what we're left with here is a pretty generous feeding again, but it doesn't seem to be much more than the last feeding they got, which was gone in no time. And since we've got twice the number of worms in here as there were the last time we fed, I'm expecting to see the food vanish pretty quickly. So I guess we'll see what happens. Alright, so let's get this stuff covered up. This is now their second feeding, only days after their first feeding. And that's in addition to the food that was already added to the bin in the original build of the bin. Alright, so as I cover up here, I guess we'll start winding down. There's not much more to see. This is all I really felt like I had to take care of today because it was just kind of hovering over me like a little bit of a black cloud. I knew it was unfinished business. I knew these worms would be hungry, and I knew there was insufficient food to take care of them. So that's it for today. Here's my feeding zone indicator. I haven't seen that in a while because all of my bins have been set up with horizontal migrations, meaning I can always tell where the feeding is happening when there's a horizontal migration. But just to play it safe, I like to mark all my newest bins to show where the feeding's happening. So thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate your company. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you enjoyed the worm spotting, as I always enjoy doing. So I'm just going to ask, like I always do, that if you did enjoy the video, then please give it a thumbs up and show that you liked it, and also consider becoming a subscriber to the channel. That's always really appreciated as well. So thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye now.